Hey everyone, this is Skizm here. I got a 2,500 point battle report. My Dark Elves versus some Lizardmen. As you can see, the sun is setting on this battlefield, and starting off on my opponent's far right, he has 10 skink skirmishers with javelins. To the left of him there's a giant impassable rock, and to the left of that, there is a stegodon, an ancient stegodon with the engine of the gods. And on riding on top, he's got a level 2 with a Cube of Darkness. For spells, he rolled on Beast, and he rolled up Wild Form and Curse of Honor here. To the left of them, there's 20 or so Temple Guard with a Standard of Discipline. In that unit, tucked away in the left corner, is an Old Blood. He's rocking Sword of Might, Enchanted Shield, Crown of Command, Light Armor, and Talisman of Endurance. So that's some stubborn goodness he's got there and some Temple Guard. And he's an Old Blood, so he hits like a nail bat to the side of the face. Behind that, there is a Pterodon, and riding him is a skink chief. He has light armor, shield, stegodon helm, and a spear. He's mainly there to keep the predatory fighter in check for the Saurus. To the left of him, there's a 20-man skink bunker, and in there is 2 Croxagore and a level 2 with a Dispel Scroll. He rolled on the beast chart as well. He rolled up Wild Form and Savage Beast of Horos. Now, the one thing I do like about this setup that I'm going against is that he's only got level 2 casters. So that means my level 4 caster should have an advantage in the magic phase. And also my level 2 Doomfire Warlock should have an even slate against these guys. Now, the good thing about his setup here is he does have 2 giant monsters here that have balance spells. So if he can throw small dice at a lot of these spells and try and get some stuff off. But the good thing is I'll have the dispel advantage against him. Which brings me to his next unit in front of that skink bunker is a Bastille-Dawn. To the left of him, there is 30 Saurus warriors, and to the left of him, there is 5 Saurus Cold One Cav here. And attached to that unit is his BSB. He's got riding a Cold One and rocking a Halberd, Light Armor, Dragon Helm, Dawnstone. Now behind that unit, you can barely see it. There is a Salamander Hunting Pack. And to the left of that, all skinkity skanked out, drunk in this tavern, is 10 skink skirmishers with blowpipes just chilling. Starting off from my far left, there's another giant impassable rock. To the right of that, there's 5 Doomfire Warlocks. To the right of him, there is a Master riding a Dark Pegasus. He's got a Sword of Might, Charm Shield, Dawnstone, Heavy Armor, Sea Dragon Cloak. To the right of him, there is a Bolt Thrower. To the right of the Bolt Thrower, there is 40 Executioners, and in that unit is a BSB with Heavy Armor, Sea Dragon Cloak, and Shield. Pretty naked, but he's there for rerolls. To the right of him, there is a Master riding a Dark Pegasus. He's rocking a Halberd, Dragon Helm, Luckstone, Heavy Armor, Sea Dragon Cloak. To the right of him, there is 12 Crossbowmen, and in that unit is a level 4 with a Dispel Scroll. She rolled on the Shadow Lore, and she rolled up the Withering, Enfeebling Foe, Mind Razor, and Miasma. Now, this is probably a dream spell set for me. I got the 2 Remains in Play spells, and I have Miasma, so I'll always, no matter what, have something to cast every magic phase with my caster if I want to. And Mind Razor is always good to have. It makes Corsairs useful, but it's more situational. But it's always nice to have in your back pocket in case you need it. And to the right of her, there is a Hydra. To the right of him, there's 40 Corsairs with the Standard of Discipline. And to the right of them is a second Hydra. And rounding my forces on my far right flank, I have 5 Doomfire Warlocks. So Lizardmen get turn 1. These skink move into the building, and the rest of his forces move up like so. You can see his Salamander now has a clear line of sight as the Cold Ones have moved out of the front of them. And his Saurus just tiptoe into the forest. Now his magic phase, I know he has some bounce spells, and especially the Bastille-Dawn one can do some serious damage to these Executioners. So I let him get off Curse of Honor here, knowing that I wasn't really going to move this unit. I know I have the range advantage, and I have spells that I really want to cast, including Doom Bolts and all that good stuff. So I wasn't planning on really moving my center lines. I was going to have him come to me. So let him get off Curse of Honor here, knowing that I wasn't going to move this unit, and knowing I was going to save my dice to stop the Bastille-Dawn. And he did throw 5 dice at the Bastille-Dawn's balance spell, because if he rolled a 4, 5, or 6 on the chart, he'd 2d6, strength 5 hits or something like that, can seriously numerically shred these Executioners. So I was able to stop that. That brings me Dark Elves turn 1, and I move my Doomfire Warlocks up like so, trying to get around to the rear of his army here. My Pegmaster moves up over there, over the fence, and I am out of the front arc of his Stegodon, so I don't have to worry about him charging, and I should successfully be able to get to the rear of his forces. My Hydra and my Corsairs cautiously move up, trying to close the gate on the right flank, and here you can see my center line stayed stable, and my other Pegmaster on the other flank flies over this impassable terrain, and I get out of his front arc so I don't have to worry about the cold ones charging me. And I moved my Doomfire Warlocks back a little bit, but I'm within 18 inches so I can try and Doombolt him. However, now it just creates this awkward situation where if he tries this long charge and he fails, I'm going to take my Master into his flank, and I like that situation. Even though he's reroll with Cold Blood, I will be able to pin him in place and do whatever I want to at that point to him. And in the magic phase, I go ahead and shoot a Doombolt off at him, and I only managed to kill one cold one night, which is pretty sad. And my crossbowmen and my bolt thrower open up in the salamander hunting pack, and I managed to do 2 wounds to the salamander, and I plink off one of its crew. So not the desired effect since it is still fully operational. And that brings us to Lizardman turn 2. His Stegodon moves up to the gate, up to the wall there, and the rest of his forces move up like so. And you can see his Saurus is fully inundated in that forest now. He elects not to charge with his Saurus Cav here and just move up to get the guaranteed charge next turn. If not on the Doomfire Warlocks, then on the Bolt Thrower. This means that now it opens my Master up to charge either the Skink that just got out of the building, which I believe is not a good idea because I don't want to weather the stand and shoot there. So my other options is the Salamander flank, which is mighty juicy at this point. And here you can see his Skink with blowpipes do leave the building. He managed to get off Curse of Honor here once again, but this time he does it irresistibly. And in the backlash, his level 2 caster on his Ancient Stegodon loses both his wizard levels and forgets all of his spells and knowledge of wizardry. In a display of amazing effectiveness, the Skink Javelineers in this building unleash unholy hell on the Doomfire Warlocks and kill 3 of their number in 1 round of throwing. So that brings us to Dark Elves turn 2, and I take my Peg Master. Actually, no, I took my Hydra here and I charged his Ancient Stegodon, and he elects to flee, not really liking that matchup. So he flees all the way through his units there, and he passes all his panic because he's on Cold-Blooded Leadership 9 and the Hydra fails his charge and ends up like so. My other Pegmaster goes into the flank of his Salamander. I take my Doomfire Warlockers and I get the hell away from that building full of Skink, and my Pegmaster moves to the rear to threaten his Skink bunker. And my Corsairs move up to match the pace of the failed charge of the Hydra, and my other Hydra moves up to match the pace of the Corsairs. So I take my Doomfire Warlocks and I just move them out and around. I pass my March block test and I just move them out and around the Saurus Cav so I don't have to worry about them. The bad part of that now is I have to worry about the Saurus Cav charging my Bolt Thrower, and they're probably going to easily crush the Bolt Thrower and overrun into my Executioners. However, I don't know how that I really don't want the Saurus Cav into my flank, especially if he gets a unit into my front. But the Doomfire Warlocks are safe for now. So the Pegmaster defeats the Salamander in close combat and just reforms to face. With the resolution of combat, it takes us to Lizardman turn 3, and he takes the Saurus Cav and he throws it into the side of my Bolt Thrower as expected. His Skink with blowpipes moved up to get a good shot off on my Doomfire Warlocks or my Pegmaster, whichever one he decides to. The Skink bunker reforms to face the rear. Whether that's a good decision or not, I don't know. It's kind of futile with the fast-moving Doomfire Warlocks and my Pegmaster. I can always just get to his rear again. I think he's just trying to form it so I don't charge his rear if I do want to charge him. He takes the Saurus and just moves him out of the woods so he doesn't have to worry about losing his steadfast because of woods. And he puts him right in front of my executioners. His Bastiladon moves up as well, and his Temple Guard squares off to face against my Corsairs and the Hydras. Now, I really don't like the Hydras against the Temple Guard because the Temple Guard are strength 5, which could pose an imminent danger to the survivability of the Hydra, since he'll be hitting me on 4s, wounding me on 4s, and I'll only have a 6-up save, I believe. So that's not really good combat for a Hydra to be in. And here he reforms, he rallies his ancient Stegodon, and he squares off to face my Pegmaster. And in the magic phase, he throws 6 dice at the Bastiladon's bound spell in a desperation attempt to slim down the number of executioners. However, he doesn't roll too great on the chart. I think he rolled d6 strength 4 hits, and he only managed to kill 4 executioners. But that's 4 less he has to deal with. The skink with the javelins in the building throw their mighty javelins once again and manage to take a wound off this Hydra. His Saurus Cav trample through the bolt thrower and overrun into the flank of my executioners, which I don't really know how I feel about this matchup. Yes, I have Killing Blow, but I'm only going to be able to get 4 executioners in this fight with a champion as well. So that's only going to be 5 attacks I'll get on this Saurus. So if I don't roll too well to hit, then I could be in some serious problems here, especially if he pins me in the front with another unit. And this is Dark Elves turn 3, and I try and charge my Doomfire Warlocks, and I lose 1 to the stand and shoot. Another charge here is I take my Doomfire Warlocks into his Blowpipe skink here. And I also charge with both my Pegmasters into a skink bunker in an attempt to lock down this unit, kill his magic user, and just get these points off the table. What I really underestimated was the fact that Kroxagora is strength 5 now with a great weapon, so strength 7. That's not too good when your Pegmasters are only relying on armor saves. So seeing imminent danger, I take my level 4 and I move her out of the bunker and I move her behind my executioners. They're a little more stable even though they have Saurus Cav in their flank. 12 archers aren't really going to hold up to anything, especially the Temple Guard. So I take the Hydra on the far right flank and I move him out of the front arc of the Temple Guard. So if he wants to reform to face this one, he can, but then I'm going to get him in the side with the Corsairs. So he's kind of forced to face forward here, and if I want to, I can take this Hydra into the flank. Now that's not too bad. I won't be taking too many attacks if I do get this Hydra in the flank. It's a lot better than taking it into the front. And in the magic phase, I try and get off Enfeebling Foe and the Saurus Cav to completely nullify their effectiveness, and he pulls out his Dispel Scroll here. And when it comes down to combat, I did have a chance to allocate my attacks against some of the attacks against his BSB, but I decided to try and kill as much of the unit as possible to get that combat res up, and I managed to roll really hot with my attacks, and I kill 4 of the Saurus Cav here. And his return attacks, since I have a much higher initiative, I managed to kill the Cav there before they got to swing, and his return attacks managed to fell 2 of the executioners. So I win this combat by a landslide. Now he did issue a challenge here with his BSB, and I did decline with my BSB because his BSB would definitely chop the bejesus out of my BSB. So the BSB is in the back there because he did decline the challenge. However, I did win this combat, and plus I had ranks, so I won this combat by a landslide. He broke, and since he's the BSB, he just dies instantly, and I stay facing forward. In the combat here, the Doomfire Warlocks shred all the skink. They killed them to a man with horses and their 2 attacks each. And I just reform to face the Stegodon here. And over in the combat here, I allocate all my attacks on the skink here. I do this just so I can get a massive amount of combat res, kill as many as I can. But what I forget in this combat is that he has a rank, so he's going to be, be steadfast here. So I do let him get a chance to get the Kroxigor to attack, and he takes 2 wounds off my Pegmaster with a halberd here. And his Skink Priest actually killed the Doomfire Warlock, which is pretty pitiful. I can't make a Doomfire Warlock save to save my life, or their life for that matter. However, my Pegmasters and their steeds managed to fell 7 of the Skink, so I win this combat, but he's steadfast here, so he sticks around. And my Hydra regenerates 1 of his wounds from the spears, the javelins of the Skink here. That takes us to Lizardman turn 4. He takes his Temple Guard and he charges my Hydra. I flee. He redirects into my Corsairs. I flee once more. So he ends up failing this charge and he's out in the open, which buys me another turn. He takes his Bastiladon and his Skink Chief on a Pterodon, and he just matches speed with his Saurus Warriors here. He knows that the Executioners are bad news for them, so he just stays put, hoping to get off some magic spells to buff them up. His Ancient Stegodon moves forward here and is going to try and get off some balance spells. However, actually he's going to throw some javelins too, which is pretty effective from that Stegodon this game, but we'll see that later. The Bastiladon here opens up with his Arc Thrower here, and he takes off 2 of the Executioners. I was definitely sweating bullets when he got the spell off, but unfortunately he didn't roll too high, and he only managed to kill 2. And his Javelin in the building here, continually being a nuisance, just take off 2 of the Corsairs. Not really a big deal, but those Corsairs died a sad, sad, sad death. And here, the Javelins of the Skink on top, which I don't know how anybody ever remembers to throw them, actually managed to kill a Doomfire Warlock. In the combat over here, I don't want to mess around with these Kroxigor anymore, so I allocate all my attacks with both my Pegmasters on the Kroxigor. I do 4 wounds in total. I kill 1 Kroxigor, and 1 Kroxigor has a wound on him, but he still has a chance to swing, and he takes the last wound off the Pegmaster with a halberd, so he's dead. Finally, one of my Pegmasters has fallen in battle, and it is a sad, sad time indeed. However, I do win this combat, but he is steadfast once again, and he sticks, and then he reforms. So my turn 4, my Hydra fails the rally and continues to try and run off the board. My level 4 moves over to grant her leadership to the Hydra next turn, so I have a better chance to rally, because if I fail 1 more, I'm probably off the board. However, my Corsairs do rally, which is good. I take my Executioners and I charge into his Saurus unit here. So that should be a bloody fight indeed. My Hydra moves to the rear here, just to try and get some rear charges if there's anything still sitting around by the time my next turn rolls around. And my Doomfire Warlocks has moved to the rear of the Stegodon, because I don't want to embrace a nice loving hug from that thing. And there you can see how I just moved to the rear. In the magic phase, I do manage to eke out an enfeebling foe on the Saurus Warriors, so they're -2 strength. So they are strength 2 Saurus Warriors, which is really good. Really, really good. And these crossbows open up on the Skink Chief. Now, I fully expected to drop him from his Pterodon. However, I only managed to do 1 stupid wound to this thing, so it's still around. I had a good feeling at 24 crossbow shots at half range should be able to deal with him, but wasn't meant to be. Over here, my Master goes and he takes the final. He allocates all his attacks on the Kroxigor and takes the last 2 wounds off the Kroxigor. Of course, the Skink can't hurt him because he's got a 1-up rerollable save. However, he's still got a rank, so he sticks around. In the combat here, I managed to kill 17 Saurus Warriors with my horde of Executioners, and he manages to do 2 wounds to me since he is strength 2. I win this combat by a large, inordinate amount. And he flees, and now with all these juicy targets in front of me, I elect not to pursue him. I have a lot of units back there that can possibly mop up that unit later on. So at this point, I elect to reform the Executioners. So it takes us to turn 5. He charges my crossbowmen. My crossbowmen flee, so I run away and he manages, I roll kind of low, and he manages to catch and destroy that unit, and he landed about 1 inch away from my sorceress, and I passed my panic test. However, he came amazingly close to just catching my sorceress in that overrun there, and that would not have been good for the sorceress. Not good at all. So the crossbowmen have been wiped off the table. I thought I'd be able to make that flee, but he was too close and he rolled too high. And this also shows he tried to charge the crossbowman with his Bastillodon and his Pterodon as well. And he charged with the Bastillodon first and his Pterodon, and he charged with his Saurus unit, and that's when I elected to flee. So they all tried to overrun too, and they all ended up with a failed charge here. He reforms his Stegodon and to face in my Doomfire Warlocks and to throw some more javelins. His Skink in the building and take off another 2 Corsairs. And in the combat here, I finally take out 4 more of the Skink, and I managed to break him from being steadfast. However, he sticks, believe it or not. But it takes us to Dark Elves turn 5. I take my Executioners and I charge his Bastillodon, and he elects to flee. And I fail this charge, and I try and catch him, and I don't even make it into the Pterodon. I think I rolled a total of 4 on my attempt to pursue him, so that was pretty bad. Then I take my Corsairs and I charge his Bastillodon, and he elects to flee. He has to flee again since he's already fleeing, so he flees away, and my Corsairs fail a charge. And then my Hydra, he's in the front arc of my Hydra now, so then I charge him with my Hydra, and he has to flee again. So I attempt to redirect into his Pterodon with a Hydra, and he flees with him. So after all these charges and all these fleeing, it ends up being he flees straight through his Temple Guard with both his units, and they end up like so in this kind of conga line headed off the board in the same direction that my Hydra is headed. And here you can see it once again, how he fleed away from the Hydra. And it creates this horrible conga line with my Hydra still running and my level 4 right in the middle of all this. So after the charge phase, in the remaining moves phase, I take my level 4 and I move her the hell away from the Temple Guard unit. My Doomfire Warlocks move out of the front line of sight of his Stegodon. My Peg Master here kills the rest of the whole entire Skink unit, and so it's just his Skink Chief left, Skink Priest left, and he flees. I was reaching this. Now I could have 100% caught and run down the Skink Chief. However, the Skink Chief is not that many points, and this Saurus unit is a lot more points, and I won't be able to get my Doomfire Warlocks over there to chase him off this round. So I elect to reform to go after the larger point total here. So I might miss out on the Skink Priest points, but I really need to get these Saurus off the board because that's a big chunk of points. That takes us to Lizardman turn 6. He managed to rally his Bastillodon. He managed to rally his Skink Brave on a Pterodon. And he manages to just reform his Temple Guard unit who's facing the wrong direction. But now they're facing the right direction. And his Stegodon just reforms one more time to face and throw some javelins at these Doomfire Warlocks. He sees this opportunity, and at this point I officially poop my pants. My level 4 is out in the open, and his Bastillodon is pointed in that direction, so he throws all the dice, I think 5 dice, 6 dice at the bounce spell and the Bastillodon. However, he does not roll double 6s, so I draw out my Dispel Scroll because that probably would have killed my level 4, and that's not the way I want her to go out. So I can breathe a sigh of relief after this one, but man, that was, yeah, not cool. Not cool. I always forget, you know, with my level 4 taken out of the units, I love taking them out of the units to be more mobile and get out of the front line of sights and just, you know, grant their leadership and all kinds of good stuff. But sometimes you can't forget bounce spells, and then, you know, his Skink were way on the flanks. I didn't have to worry about him right now, but man, that Bastillodon bounce spell really snuck up on me there. So the skink in the building here open up and they throw their javelins once again and kill 2 more of the Corsairs. So these guys are on a killing spree. An absolute savage in that building. And then his javelins on his Ancient Stegodon open up and take off another Doomfire Warlock. That takes us to turn 6 for the Dark Elves. I charge and run down his Saurus unit. So thank you, Nom Nom, to all those points. I take my level 4 and I move her behind my Executioners. My Executioners charge into the Temple Guard here. My Corsairs reform to just face. It's turn 6. They can't do anything at this point. They're facing the complete wrong direction. And my Hydra just sits around and does a laughy pants dance in the back there. However, my Hydra does decide to rally this turn, or rally last turn, but it was rallied nonetheless. It didn't go off the board. I think it rallied right before I moved my my level 4 out of the way of the Temple Guard there. So I don't lose those points. And my Doomfire Warlocks, I move them up here, and I manage to throw a bunch of dice at Doombolt and zap the Skink Priest off the board. So I do manage to get both points, the Skink Priest and the Saurus unit. So in the combat here, the Old Blood issues a challenge. I think he did this just to avoid as much killing blow as he possibly could. So in the challenge, the Old Blood absolutely whomps the Executioner Champion. However, the Executioner Champion did get off a killing blow on his Old Blood. However, he made his 5+ ward save. So I did make him sweat a little bit there, but you know, it just goes to show, even though the Old Blood probably could have killed 4 or 5 of the Executioners, making that challenge probably did keep him from death, because if I had get another killing blow, it would have exponentially increased my chances of getting him off the board. And there goes Stubborn, and he probably would have broken and be run down. So, although the challenge does seem a little weird in the situation, but just trying to negate as many killing blows as I would have had going his way, it was actually a pretty good idea. However, that did leave the rest of his unit here pretty vulnerable, and the Executioners went to town and felled 18 of the Temple Guard. And in the return attacks, he managed to fell 2 additional Executioners in a horrid display of dice rolling. However, you got to remember that I went in initiative 5, he went in initiative 4 order, I think. I think Temple got initiative 2 or 3, but they get +1 because of the Bastillodon. Either way, it's not 5. So I did manage to kill 18 before he got to swing. So I only got to swing like 6 of them, I believe, because I think there's 24 in this unit. So yeah, it was a staggering defeat for the Temple Guard nonetheless. Some notes here. Bastillodons. They make it honest meta. I mean, they scare the hell out of me. Just the potential to roll a 6 and get 2d6 strength 6 hits is pretty damn good. But the roll, you know, the 4 to 5, 2d6 strength 5 hits is pretty amazing, especially when you're toughness 3 and heavy armor. And my main combat unit is, you know, very vulnerable to the Bastillodon. Especially when I took my character out of the unit. I mean, it was really silly, and it didn't seem silly at the time. But then when you don't realize the amount of dice that thing could possibly pump out with its balance spell, could easily cleave through a toughness 3 and no save model on its own. So Bastillodon is definitely something to look out for, and I always underestimate it, but at the same point I'm always frightened of it. The Old Blood in the Temple Guard. I think the Old Blood, the Stubborn, I think the Old Blood, it's always a fearsome unit. Old Bloods are always very tough to deal with. They're very, very sturdy and very killy, especially with a new predatory fighter roll. You roll a few 6s and you get a pretty amazing amount of attacks. However, I think the Stubborn could have done a little bit better, and the Old Blood's strength would have been a little bit better off in the Saurus unit, because the Saurus unit is definitely lacking strength, and although they have a little more ranks, they definitely need that strength to try and bolster their combat, to try and win a combat. With a Temple Guard strength 5 and their weapon skill 4, they can usually do a good amount of damage on their own. This is my next one. I hate skinks. I hate them. I absolutely abhor skinks. I have a rancor for skinks. I don't. They just find a way to constantly piss me off, because I can't really deal with them in a lot of ways. I mean, I was lucky the blowpipe skinks got a little emboldened there and tried to take out, you know, the Doomfire Warlocks or my Pegmaster, and failed, and they left them open to get charged. But like the ones in the building there, the ones on the back of the Stegodon, I just couldn't deal with. Even the one on the Pterodon I couldn't get rid of. And they were just constantly, you know, killing, doing 1 wound here, 2 wounds here, 1 wound here, and those are points I couldn't get off the table. I really despise skinks. So whether that makes them good or bad or effective, it doesn't really matter. I just hate them. I absolutely do. And that leads to another thing I just completely underestimated with my Peg Masters is the Kroxigor in a skink unit. That skink unit is nothing. But with the 2 Kroxigor in it, having those strength 7 attacks, that really makes them a lot more viable against targets like, let's say, anything like a monster. Like, say I take a Hydra in there. I mean, yeah, my Hydra could maybe kill a Crocs, but if I don't, he's got these strength 7 attacks that are just going to completely take my Hydra out. My Hydra wouldn't stand a chance. One of them would. However, this is also another game where both Hydras live, so and I even got to regenerate a wound, believe it or not. Those new Hydra rules kicking into effect. I would much rather have regeneration, but you know, if I can regenerate, and that's one thing I guess the regeneration wound is good for, is not so much into combat. Where a Hydra going against a combat unit will most likely get chopped down if they're anything strength 5 or 6, or anything with a great weapon will just completely dismember a Hydra. But like against shooting, and I'm not saying not mass shooting, but light shooting and skirmish units, the Hydra will be able to regenerate wounds, and is evident with the javelin and some bow fire. It'll be able to get some wounds back, but definitely not against a main combat block with a few spells on it or with great weapons. That is not the role of a Hydra whatsoever. So, victory to the Dark Elves in game number 3 of their stand here. So, thank you very much for listening and watching. Catch you next time.